grip on. Jolly Star moves large on the outside. Jolly Star moved up to Vivac. Jolly Star claims a fourth group.
It's time for the year-round carnival with Vince Accardi and your host, Racetrack Rolfie.
What's new, Pussy Kitten? Tom Jones, letting us in there. Some stunning racing over the weekend. Thanks so much for listening to Year Round Carnival, where we'll break down the big four Group 1 races in both Flemington and Randwick. Flemington, of course, we had contrasting big races. The All-Star Mile run at typically crazy pace with Pride of Jenny up front, won by Tom Kitten, and the Newmarket, a complete reverse, a walk sprint dash home with Cabalis and Froggy Newitt adding his name to the honour roll and now having the record in the Newmarket. In Sydney, well, we could have played the track A Star Is Born because Sheza Alibi was stunning and Jolly Star got some more money for Vince. Morning, Vince Accardi from Daily Sectionals.
Good morning, Rolfie. Unbelievable weekend of racing. Unbelievable, some of these performances. Stunning, actually stunning.
You got to love it. So we'll kick off with the two big ones at Randwick. Firstly, did Randwick, the rail out 5 metres, people are starting to cotton onto it. The lanes don't move, but pretty much you'd say it played on pace and and that was as expected with the rail out.
Absolutely, Rolfie, no question. But, there were a couple of back markers that managed to sneak in. But, yeah, it was all about on-pace leader is where all the action was. Track-wise, what was, in my view, extremely noticeable was how quick the surface was over the last 400. The last 200 metres, it had to be G3. To the 400 metres, well, we're sort of somewhere in between the G3, G4 range. Maybe the same could be said, touch softer to the 600. And realistically, if you pull out just two key races to the 800 metre point, I'd scored that profile to be about 2.8 below benchmark. And Rolfie, does that mean that was probably a soft 5?
Yeah, a bit of a two-speed track, wasn't it?
Yeah, a bit of a two-speed track.
So, before we get into the overall, we should, give the 3 Brownlow votes to J Mac. Now, there's always outliers. Pride of Jenny's an outlier. We'll get to her, the insane speed she creates, but she keeps going. You've got a theory. Be a bit careful once riders ride 3 winners. J Mac's the outlier, is he? What a freak of a man to be able to ride 6 winners. And every time you throw him on, it's like he hasn't ridden the previous winner. He just wants to ride the next one.
Yeah, well, since the war, only two riders have been able to do it. That J Mac and Cassidy, unbelievable.
J Mac and J Cass.
Well, also probably, he does get the best horses, but I can't believe how he does it. His rides are just like sublime. He adds more to all his horses, I believe. He just does. I don't know what the tax is for that. But at the end of the day, in terms of how much you got to give it in a race, it's a lot.
Well, I know you don't like paying tax, but you don't mind paying J-Mac tax because it means you've won.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. And I couldn't believe, let's say, Jolly Star, for instance, that you could get $1.30 a place and over $2 a win. I mean, it was just a joke.
Well, we might start with the first features that the J-Mac won, which was race 7, the Challenge Stakes. And which way did you end up going, with Generosity or Giga Kick?
Ralphie, I stayed out. I would have liked to have punted in the race like all of us do after the event, but I chose to sit on the fence and add a little sook.
Well, I reckon the sook would have come early. Poor Raging Force was slowly away and has badly hurt himself. We hope he recovers, but he's in not a well way last I read. But really, after about 400 metres, when Generosity box seated, it looked a race of two halves, didn't it? And from there, he looked like he, as in J-Mac, and she, as in Generosity, just looked the one to beat. It ended up being a pretty good race visually, 3-way finish, but she just looked like she was going to get the perfect run from there.
It was gold. It really was. They're going 2.1 lengths below benchmark. Decent clip for 1,000 metres. Generosity sitting 3.9 below benchmark, inside 2 lengths from the leader. Giga Kick, the favourite, it's 6.8 lengths below benchmark. You could say you're still there in the zone, but then not a big shift in the middle. that shift in the middle, like Generosity's gone 0.4 above, Marzu's gone 0.7 above, so still stimulating some speed. And it got down to the race being the serious part was realistically probably 500 from home is where it all took place. And that last 400, it was extremely weaponised. Number one, track speed being firm. Number two, the setup to be able to put a blistering 400 down. And they did. Generosity, +7. Mahuna, +5.7. Marzu, up the front, still produced 4.5. And Giga Kick, 9.9. Now, that's almost as good as what Tentaurus did first, at Flemington 1000.
Well, it was probably the case. We'll obviously get to Tentaurus that the two favourites in the big sprints, obviously the Newmarket, the other one that we'll get to. They probably couldn't have done much more under the race shapes they get to. I call it the picket fence. When they run the best last 800, 600, 400, and 200 a day, they generally don't lose the next start.
No, and the sad part from my perspective was when I sort of stood on the sidelines, I just knew that the probability of being able to get a decent price now for Generosity moving forward, you're not going to get your $10 anymore.
Well, you will if it goes to the TJ.
Oh, okay, yeah, fair enough.
But that's the thing. Maybe we need to have a new category called Group 1.5 or Group 1 with a plus, because that TJ is going to be just a monster sprint race.
Absolutely,
a real highlight of the carnival. Would we say Skybird got a pass mark for her return too?
For 1,000 metres, I felt the run was excellent. When you sort of peel back the performance, the horse, typically for 1,000 metres, it has gone a touch quicker in the past, but just given the circumstances and what I felt the course was like to the 800 metre point, it was pretty good. The middle, probably the area where it didn't probably help the horse Ralphie enough to just launch a bit better. But the close, when you go through the history of this horse's close, that's the second biggest close over the last 400 metres. And even if we make some adjustments for the last 400 in terms of speed, and we want to deduct a length or two, the reality is it still sits right up in its sort of top three. Big run.
Let's get to the Randwick Guineas now. I'm channeling Dean Lester saying about slow times hiding the truth, and with Sheza Alibi, her spring form, and we discussed this on the preview podcast, her big explosions were late off slow tempos, and then at Caulfield first up, she really didn't get clear until the 200 out. Now, that was a much faster race than she raced in the spring, but what I'm coming to here is we knew she was good, but we didn't know how good because there wasn't a sort of a fair fight race simulation. Now there's a fair fight. How good is this horse, Sheza Alibi?
Ralphie, a star's born. That's really, keeping it simple. A star has been born. Number one, just the setup of the race in terms of what had to happen. That speed was electric. Given that only 2 races on the entire card had above benchmark split time to the 800, that's one part. But then how far above is a completely separate issue. And if you played around with it, now I always leave the raws in their proper nature, so that way you're not trying to manipulate data, you're just leaving it clean as is, and then you can make a call on a personal assessment how you feel the shift is. But I wouldn't be unrealistic if I said to you, Ralphie, an adjustment on that speed somewhere near +10. But 7.2, based on the lay of the track and the history of the data, about 1,400 records, that's massive, Ralphie. Sheza Alibi, no way in the world I projected that horse to be in that spot. And, of course, I'm not having the figures while they're running. 2.7 above benchmarks is sharp. And the hard part for all the horses was it was still super intense in the mid. Like the average field speed was 4.2 lengths above benchmark. Now, if you look at the average field speed to the 800, it was 3.2. So they actually increased the pressure. And this is the old story about the weight for age and can horses handle high pressure? And high pressure is 2 sections combined. And we've got an increase of pace off a fast pace. And then for this horse to run the last 400 plus 2.3, it's just crazy, Ralphie. Absolutely crazy. And even when I looked at the 4 and the 2, there's a little blemish there in terms of the slowing, and still outstripped it over the last 200 metres. I just sat back and said, you haven't even come to your top, and you put in a plus 4.7, Ralphie. Massive. Yeah.
It's Doncaster territory. I mean, this is the thing. So, it'd be very interesting which way he goes. I think he's, publicly, Moods has said that one more run and that'll do, whatever it is. So maybe they go to the, I think it's the Queen of the Turf. But so that could be an option. But what I'm saying is, even though, and people can knock themselves out with historics, what this filly's done, I actually looked this up. This is the best Randwick Guineas win since the Autumn Sun, who was a superstar.
And this is the best filly in Australia at the moment on that run.
Yeah.
See, the other part that you look at is you look at the projection. It's a 4-length improvement, Ralphie, from first up to second up. Yeah. Now, when I peeled back and looked at the profile of what the horse could potentially do from a first up last campaign and then how much it improved, I put the figure in coming in somewhere around +3. It smashed that. Made that look slow. And I'm sitting here saying, you haven't topped out.
Well,
there's only one other horse better than it right now, probably in the country, if we're talking about females.
It's called Autumn Glow.
Yeah. And I'm saying probably.
Well,
I'm not sure now.
Now what you're saying is it's in her territory.
Yeah. Could be serious. What a serious game that would be if they ran into each other in the future. Wow.
We like spitballing. We do the preview podcast when we've got all the information, but we like spitballing. My gut feel with Autumn Boy, and now it's happened to be right. We're going to right or wrong. My gut feel with Autumn Boy leading to this race was Chris Waller was eyeing the Doncaster as well as the Randwick Guineas. So he was here second up. He was obviously here to play. They obviously wanted to win. But what did he do last prep? Third up, won the Caulfield Guineas. What is he now? Third up. And if he's Doncaster horse, I want to be with him. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, well, so there's a few factors, and this is the hard part for any trainer. And no trainer can crystal ball this. You do your best to prepare, but Autumn Boy's baseline first section, first up at 1400 was 6.3 below.
On Saturday?
Yeah, Saturday's going 4.2 above.
So he's going 10 lengths better than his profile at the moment.
Yeah, and in the mid, it's sort of like almost 4 lengths faster than the first up as well. So that's massive elevation. And that's tough. Like when it did it over a mile third up last prep, and this is now touching on your point about the third up, it came off a second run baseline layer of plus 1.5. So it was 3 lengths below. That was already 3 lengths quicker than what it did first up last prep when you compare it. And then it was 1.5 above, and then it hit the 5.8, peaking third up. And this is how that horse could cope to a large extent. But here, when you're faced with that adversity, 2 huge first and second sections, and you just don't have that baseline of conditioning, you've only got really one thing happening late, and that's deterioration. The horse actually deteriorated from, you look at it from the 6 of the 4s plus 1.4, 4 to the 2, 0.6 below, 2 lengths reduction, Ralphie. That's all conditioning of the high pressure. And then the last 200 metres gone 1.2 below. That's another half a length. So you look at it from the 6 to the 4 to the finish line, it's 2.6 lengths. Now, if I give that a 100% elevation onto that, it still falls short of Sheza Alibi, who's also going to improve. So, I'm not saying they're going to race against each other next start or whatever, but just putting it all into a package about where they're going and who's got what capability.
Yeah, well, I mean, my gut feel is that Moods avoids the Doncaster, goes to the Queen of the Turf, and that Chris Waller goes to the Doncaster with Autumn Boy. And I've just looked at another layer. He resumed this prep with the blinkers off. The blinkers still haven't come on. So
So maybe leaving that for the big one, you reckon, Ralphie?
that's my gut feel. Anyway.
Okay. No, that's good.
We always give our members an opportunity to ask a question here. Firstly, though, Mark hasn't asked a question. He just said, no question from me. Just a shout out to Vince and the team for the wonderful work they do. Race speed profiles and info guided me to the big six in the quaddie in Sydney. Thanks to everyone. Keep up the excellent work. That's nice to hear, Vince.
That's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Very, very happy to hear that. And the race speed profiles are performing very well, Ralphie.
Absolutely. Now, the other horse, of course, it was fantastic in that, even though you don't often say a horse gets beat 5 lengths, that it's fantastic. But I think for its profile, and this is where the question from Darren comes in, do you have Attica's split times? Look from the naked eye, very good run, further distance and grand final to come. Love what Joe Pride does with the stable. His team of horses always run well. More often than not, you get great odds each way all day. His team of horses gives you a good return every week. So Attica was, as I said, beaten 5 lengths, but his profile is better further. I dare say his grand final is Rosehill Guineas and AJC Derby, so 2,000, 2,400. In a high-pressure situation, what do you read out of that?
Well, through the first split time, again, it had that adversity they had to face, coming off a first up run 6.1 lengths below benchmark, and now having to switch gears and make a huge leap to +3. Make no mistake, Ralphie, these are extremely difficult tasks, particularly if you then have the Bunsen burners on in the middle. And This horse reached a brand new PB in the middle, like +5. So not only going fast early, second fastest in its life, had to have a big shift in gears from first up to second up, and then smashing anything that it's ever done before in the mid, whopping drop off over the last 400 metres. And we just talked about the scenarios of what happened to Autumn Boy, but this run was much bigger in terms of a conditioning blowout. It was, Ralphie, we're looking at 4.7, almost 6 lengths blowout in conditioning. That's how much the horse felt that run. It was torrid in terms of how hard it had to work, and still, Gamely for third, it's got a big upside coming for sure.
And probably worth underlining your fundamental, which is 3-year-olds can cope.
They absolutely can. So I'm always excited when this happens, because what are the chances of it if they go to say 2,000 metres of getting this tempo, this shape, where it's high pressure for the first 2/3 of the race? It's highly unlikely. So the horse is going to adapt beautifully, come off, battle ready now, battle ready.
All right, the other Group 1, the Canterbury Stakes, Jolly Star. I'll read our of course, we send members best of the day all the time. This horse was second best of the day. There was a handy one called Autumn Glow the same day. In her lead in at Randwick on the 14th. Outstanding return from the triple Group 1 winner to a level that said she could still have her best in front of her. 3.7 lengths below benchmark at the 800, was in her comfort zone, relaxing early before +5 in the mid-race, 5.5 last 400. Her close included second best last 800 and third best last 600 and 400 a day. Did produce a 4.5 PB first up last prep, but it was over 1100. Clearly fully wound up to get an Everest slot. This conversely sets her up as a platform run. As such, best ever performance this time in would be no surprise. Canterbury Stakes question marks from here. Well, she won the Canterbury Stakes, and what'd she do?
Oh, well, that first section, 6.4 lengths below benchmark, given the conditions of the ground, pretty cruisy. This is like almost I won't say the absolute golden position, but if you make adjustments, it's pretty close to her medium profile through the first split time. So would have just travelled, I would say, realistically, cruise mode. The middle, nice surge, 8.6 length mid-race squeeze. It's a bit better than what her average is, Ralphie. Her averages are, sits just below 6, so that's solid. But the last 400, the weapon came out, +7.1. And this is when you get the architecture where you can, that flow state, you just flow, not overtaxing through the first section. You haven't outreached yourself in terms of your stride capability, your aerobic capacity in the middle. You're still all sort of in a beautiful structure, and then you just let down with the ripping last 400, +7.1. That's one of her top 2 performances for the last 400 metres, or top 3. And I have to say to you that it's the quickest tempo too in terms of that setup of the speed, even though it's only marginal, but it still is off the quickest tempo for this horse.
Kind of thinking they're going to say, well, that's about the end of her distance range. Let's freshen her up for the TJ Smith over 1200, which I think is 4 weeks, if I've got this right, between runs. So probably ideal for her. And she's going to be turning up and rocking and rolling in that race too.
Yeah, well, we've always known that the big task for this horse, and not sure whether this has been overcome or not yet, because horses do grow and mature and get a bit stronger, is what happens when you've got high intensity early.
Yes.
Can you cope? And this is not, from past blueprint, it shows that's the Achilles heel. Maybe the TJ might not have that sort of ingredient set up. Then it's going to be pretty straightforward about where the horse is likely to finish. But if it does have a setup where it's high intensity, then it's not like I'm going to be winning that race.
Give us a fun matchup now, 4 weeks between runs on these two horses, Jolly Star versus Giga Kick in the 1200 TJ.
Yeah, well, no matter what, Jolly's now a run ahead, right?
Yeah.
So that's pretty interesting. And this is just also, again, just coming down to the structure of trainers and their capability about how to just get them battle ready and all the other things that need to happen, so you can overcome a few dimensions. And Giga Kick's not going to have a problem if it's high pressure. But if it's sort of like this sort of speed, and we stretch it out, like for Giga Kick, I don't believe Giga Kick can bring the 9.9 to the 1200. That's the last 400. It's probably in the range of Jolly Star. So then you've got that battle of the chessboard. The real true essence of handicapping is who's in front of who inside the 800 in the last 4.
Exciting times there for that big race ahead. Now, watching Thoroughbred Central, fantastic show, and Ronnie Duffy made the point. You get now, and he was on the fence. I'm not putting words in his mouth, but he said, you're always going to be a little bit wary. 1.7 lengths between first to ninth means they're all average or. Oh, sorry, not average, but, you need to either be a bit wary or they're all fantastic. But looking at numbers, this is a hard race to knock. There might be a stack of winners coming out of this race.
Oh, this is real. This is a serious race, Ralphie. Even you go down to the last horse.
Yes, I was just thinking that.
No. These are all. I mean, did you see what Gringotts did? That was massive, right? So when you sit back and look at this, linebacker was always going to improve off that run. End cap, all right. Depends on how you want to. I had a huge opinion of Yorkshire, and just it toughed it out superbly. But this race was just super hot.
Yeah.
Be a whack, Lady Shenandoah. This was a pretty high profile race, Ralphie. And if you look at the spread, and you just sit back and say, okay, the spread from top to bottom, 3.6 all the way down to 0.7. What you have here is you have a 2.2 average. That means that sort of race, in many other events where these horses might disperse into, they're going to be extremely hard to beat. Now, against the very top end group of horses, well, there's a bunch of horses that are running in the 3s and the 4s, so it's going to be high-level competition.
We look after our members and our members look after us. We don't do it without our members because we have got no corporate bookie affiliations. Last week after Paradoxium's trial, this was our chat about this horse.
So let's come here to Paradoxium. Of course it is. 0.4 below benchmark in the trial. Best trialer of the morning. Okay, first 100 metres, you can't use anything to work with, 7.5, but we got race simulation after that. We absolutely have race simulation. 6 of the 4.4 above, 4 to the 2.5 above, bang, last 200 metres, plus 3.8. Of course, it's still only 900, Ralphie, but what I can clearly articulate is if you look at the combined sustained speed over the last 800 metres, it's rock solid 6.5. So this horse is absolutely ready to take a big leap forward, and there's no chance of that being flattened off that trial.
Okay, that was Paradoxium, the winner of the Todman Stakes. Cheyenne won the Riesling Stakes. Today, our members' bonus will include a bit of a deep dive into those 2-year-old races and what we can project forward to for the Golden Slipper, as well as some other little gems from both Randwick and Flemington. So if you want to become a member, via my website, racetrackralphie.com.au, click through the links and you'll get that bonus podcast. We really provide the best information we possibly can. And as we switch to Flemington, Vince, I wish I was clever enough. I just wasn't. But this was our chat about the big, booming Cabalas trial leading into his run when second to Jolly Star. Cabalas. Now, this is a horse we've had a big opinion of for a while. Is there a chance he's ready to make this real next step? And I was trying to look it up, whether they're thinking of the Oakley Plate. Maybe they go back to Flemington because he won Derby Day, that they go to the Newmarket. But whatever they do, is this horse got a ceiling on it? Because what to do with this trial? That's ridiculous.
The last 400, first and foremost, and the last 200 metres are monster signals. Last 400 was race simulation for sure, between the 4 and the 2 plus 1.2, last 200 plus 5.5, huge. Coming off that in the mid-race, it was also big, over the top, but just franking that there's simulation there with a 5.5 length squeeze. I love the fact that it was 1,000 metres, so the 0.7 below benchmark, you can take that to the bank. Only one place to go, upwards. And what I also like is it's probably not a sideways flat foot, flattening trial, which I also like, Ralphie. It just means that we're going to go to the races and we're probably going to make the 0.7 below benchmark in the trial look like nothing when it gets out to the races.
And Vince, Craig Newitt and Bjorn Baker, just too smart, leading throughout on a very unusual shape in the Newmarket handicap. What's your thoughts post-race with Cabalas beating Gallant Son at the Bolters odds, $19 into $61?
Yeah, well, first of all, I was really grateful for myself not betting in that race because realistically, it was a tough race. It was always going to be a tough race. It wasn't going to be so simple. But I want to ask the question, just before we dial in on these horses, what's your take that they all went to the inside?
Puzzling, but my assumption is that there was wind in play, and I think I heard communication from someone, or maybe I read it, that the jockeys felt that those middle lanes were inferior. So unless the field split, that's where they were going to go, and they didn't split.
So just imagine that, Ralphie. Why were the middle lanes inferior?
Well, generally that's water.
Well, we just got to call it as it is, right? So that I thought that was really interesting. Now, I don't want to throw any water on the performance of the winner, and nor am I saying that I should have a different view to Tentaris. I mean, I didn't bet in the race, so it's got nothing to do with any wagering processes. But this outcome, if anyone was sitting there taking a position that maybe they go up the middle or to the outside, this race changes complexion.
It's a different race.
Yeah, it's a completely different race and completely different speed in the ground generally. But, of course, switching to the inside, win, no win, it's a ground condition issue for them to do that because that's not normal. Now, it does happen, and that shifts the speed. So the speed, 1.2 lengths below benchmark Cabalas. Wow. When you look at that and you say to yourself, that's like bang on, give or take a length, in its absolute A1 position for comfort zone. And then it's all about what can I unleash over the last 400 metres. So when you then break that down, Cabalas has gone from 1.2 lengths below benchmark, leading the field. The field speed average is 3.5 lengths below benchmark. So most runners are conserving. But the move in the middle was not significant, Ralphie. It was +1 average. So what's happened is the whole field's just built gradually to 4 lengths. Now, if there's an explosion, that means everybody starts to roll more aggressively, quicker. But they've just had the gradual build up, and then it was that last 400 metres, what everybody could put down. And as we know, Flemington, as always, delivers when it comes to what it's capable of doing over the last 400 metres. So good speed in the ground, and every horse was able to just give what they had, but the setup was already done. Caballas has been able to win the race, only having to go 2.3 lengths above benchmark last 400. And the crazy part's this, Rolfie, the horse dropped 1.6 lengths over the last 400 metres off this setup. So I'm just sitting back here saying, wow, and Tentaris only managed to produce a 2.9 above last 400. And as crazy as it sounds, that was the quickest. And the horse was building. You can see there's still the building. What could have happened if that had been the outside? Well, I'm only guessing, Ralphie. Could things have changed? I don't know. But ultimately, Caballas was a horse showing the big signal that had high talent. It was now whether it could actually step up and make this transition. And realistically, Rolfie, it did. 2.5. That's a new PB for the horse. You can't do any more than that. There's a drop off at the end, which suggests that the stable, Bjorn, probably still got something left.
Yep. After winning the Group 1.
Yep.
I can't help thinking this is your Chaos Theory 101. I'm just looked up the windows. It was bugging me. This Rockin' horse that won at Bolter's Odds, the Newmarket, it was the same type of thing. They split. They went to the inside. The inside of the day was the right lanes, and that's the raffle, if you like, of straight racing.
Yeah, and especially when you've got a big field, and they all went there. So, and that also means there's ground loss too from the wider draws. So where the wider draws are usually your friend, and wider draw in this case is like once you start being sort of barrier 8, 9, 10 or wider, you're going to cover more ground because you swing into the inside. That means you lose a bit of momentum. Now, lucky the race wasn't like extra brutal through the first half of the race. That helped. But at the end of the day, when you're making more ground and you're coming across, you're naturally going to be slightly further back than ideal, and then you've got to take off. And everybody's taking off with a lot of energy left in the last 400 metres.
Before we get to the favourite, a lot of questions about Seppels, including from Luca. Interested in the return of Seppels. I'm on him in the Doncaster. Hopefully he heads that way. Just getting this from Stephen. He asked about Tentaris. We'll get to that. So firstly, Seppels. What did you make of the return of Seppels?
Well, I'm just going to call this. I didn't feel Stackhouse's ride was the best because I was watching that very closely because this is a horse that I got a huge opinion of. And I wanted to see, are we going to have this emergence of this horse actually taking another step and become like one of the elite horses in Australia? And I just felt the ride was off. Like it was, you go and have a good look at it. You could just see procrastination everywhere. And that doesn't make you an elite rider when you do that in an elite race. That doesn't mean as well, Ralph, if the horse wins, right? Yep. I'm just saying that you not getting the best ride. And then I have a look at the intel and, and you just look at it, right? Here we go. Seppels has gone 2.6 lengths below benchmark first split time. Beautiful spot to be in, Ralphie. Absolutely beautiful. Now, if he didn't make the procrastination, maybe he would have really tested Caballas. Not saying he would have beaten him, but he would have really tested him. But instead, what's happened is he's emerged with his biggest surge between the 4 and the 2, and it's plus 2.4, and then softened a little bit. Not a lot, because there wasn't that many horses that did better in terms of where you were positioned. I mean, to give you the example, Ralphie, you're going 2 lengths faster than Tentaris, but your last 200 metres is only 1.4 lengths slower. So that means when you look at those two, the favour goes to Seppels, and then you look at rides. So I thought the run was massive, but you've got to deal with the rider, Ralphie. And this is always a challenge also when you're betting. Not saying Stackhouse is no good, but you just... So this is why generally riders like that, if they're up the front, they don't have that problem leading or outside the lead or just stalking. But when you're just like there's a little group of yous, and maybe the air's not clean and clear, you can start having some mind games at critical points, and you pull the wrong lever and you don't go in that flow state. This is what happens in big races. They don't come around every day.
You said something very interesting Saturday morning, but when it came to in deciding to stay out of the new market, and that was your simulations ended up saying there's Tentaurus only a 60% chance of running a place. I dare say a big part of that was position and running queries, and in the end, the fair let you on, and the fair's the collective intelligence of the market, and that's why they ended up doing it. So he's missed a place, and then your numbers come out. My gut feel was right by your numbers. His last 400 basically was in line with as good as he can produce last 400, because this horse's weapon is a sustained 800 off fast speed. Instead, he only got out at the 400 metre mark and it was off a soft speed.
Yeah, you couldn't have summed it up any better than that, Ralphie. That's exactly right. And these things happen. Also, I know it's 21 days and all that. We look at that first up run. It was massive, Ralphie. Like, it was such a big run. Maybe a little bit stays behind as well, even with the 21 days, right? Just a little bit. And that could affect, like that speed. Now, I feel the speed impact came more so because everybody had to come across to the inside. That's what I feel. But that softness in the middle and that big, quantum leap of exertion wasn't there to allow it to just overpower most of the horses, because it does have a weapon over the last 800. But that's the way the race is, Ralphie, and it was always going to be difficult.
Yeah, I can't wait to see him in the TJ. That'll be his next run, and then we'll see who is the king. And we've just spoke about Jolly Star and Giga Kick, so it's just going to be such a good race. Let's see what happens at Randwick, and hopefully it's on reasonably clean ground in a fast run race. Let's get to a couple of questions leading to the All-Star Mile from Jordana. Did the data show that Pride of Jenny went too quick early, which is why she couldn't build that gap she normally does? Also, does Vince think Pride of Jenny will bounce off that run and regress? So at time of recording this Monday morning, she's going to the Australian Cup, which I think is in 3 weeks, if I've got my timing right, which is not a bad gap notionally. Vince will talk through the breakdown of that, and also from Stephen there. Breakdown, Tom Kitten, a nice collect courtesy of Vince, section by section. In my eye, he has a short sprint. Williams held him until just the right moment. Okay, Vince, what did we see on the clock with the All-Star Mile?
Yeah, I've got to think about this one. This is crazy. Plus 12.9, Pride of Jenny.
So that's, even by her standards, that's starting to get the upper range, isn't it?
Yeah. Declan Bates had his bull best in terms of trying to emulate Craig Newitt. Going too fast. First up. And this is what's happened. It's big. It's huge. 12.9, Ralphie. Last campaign never got anywhere near that in all the runs. The campaign before, there was the second up run was 14.7. That was Flemington. But the first up run was 7.4. So that just on that first up variable, it's 5 lengths faster than what it typically can do. And it's just how it doesn't matter how forward you are and what stable you're coming from. When you're asked to go at that phenomenal speed first up, you are going to have some battles. And that also tells me something else. I don't usually do these things with Flemington, but it also teaches me about around the circuit, all good, except for the straight. Back part of the straight, we're talking. Where you got the 1,200 and the 1,000 metres until you get to the course proper. So I just find that really, really interesting, that speed in the ground was everywhere, and this ignited, in my view. Maybe the rider didn't want to go that fast, but the ground had so much speed in it. And maybe there can be some wind assistance as well, Ralphie. But at the end of the day, 12.9, too much, and did a huge job. Really, I felt everybody did a huge job. Evaporate, unbelievable. 11.1 first section. Tom Kitten, 9.6, Ralphie, through the first section. Go and find that in its record. Last
So
time,
here's the Craig Williams genius, though, Vince, because he clearly said, I'm not letting Prodigy get out of my sights. I just want to test this horse. This is me just thinking what
Yep.
Craig Williams might have been thinking. He's saying, I need to test this horse early, not do I'll get out the back and then have a cry afterwards that Prodigy was too far in front. I'm just going to keep Prodigy in my sights. And what do you always say when there's an insane speed? 3 to 6 lengths. How fast was he from Prodigy?
exactly 3.3, and the advantage of one run in.
Yes.
Got the
And a
baseline.
trial.
Yep.
And a trial.
You got the baseline in, Ralphie. And Tom Kitten was, just sensational. 4.1. Exactly what we thought, Ralphie. This horse was potentially going to have its best ever campaign. Yep. And we've seen another elevation up. The 28 days between runs. Genius manoeuvre. And no matter what other people have done with this horse in the past, I'm just sitting here and saying, well, Friedman team, you have got this horse absolutely humming in all aspects.
Well, look, last spring, it's funny how, you talk about with Chris Waller, with, as great as Chris Waller is, sometimes race shapes and various other occurrences are outside of your control. Well, last spring, this horse played up in the barriers before the Memsian was scratched, and they were always just that half run behind. So you need everything to go right. And again, this is another fundamental I always say with our preview podcast. Look at the horses who are just sole focused, targeted for the Group 1 race, and where is it grand final day? Well, this was the reverse. This time in, off that stunning Caulfield win, absolutely everything went right. And then Craig Williams put the cherry on top with tactical perfection.
Yeah. And really franked the scenario about how dominant Tom Keaton can be at a mile.
Yeah.
It's just amazing. Really. Just brilliant.
One thing with I couldn't think of the horse's name. It was about a decade ago. It wasn't a great horse, but Dwayne Dunn used to ride it. It had orange colours. I was going to text Wayne Hawkes. I should have. he was cuddling this horse. It was a Lonhro horse, and I'm thinking, what are you doing cuddling at the 300 metre mark? Feeding and I was barracking for it. Anyway, it wins, and then the numbers come out, and they were going this insane speed. I thought, the best jockeys know when they're going too fast that you don't want to be rushing. You need to actually just try and be conserving. And then I've got this flashback watching Craig Williams at the 300, and even Sam Friedman afterwards said, oh, what are you doing? Let it go. But it is actually, that's why he was cuddling the horse, because he knew that he'd use so much energy. It wasn't the time to push the button at the 300.
No. And this race here is going to stand up big time. This is probably one of the top 5 races that's been run this year, Ralphie. Wow. This is massive. And so even all the way down to the last horse where, I don't know, something must have happened. But when you look at, say, Steffi, it wouldn't have never known it was going to come into this brutality. Antino, to step out and turn up in this sort of speed race first up. And this is just, see, here's the situation. What happens if you go 3-4 lengths slower? I don't know if it changes the outcome, right? Because this was a tough race. And then I even looked at Sabaj, how much, I really had some question marks about what it could or couldn't do. But then finally, when you look through it and say, okay, let's see what happens next, start to see if you can put it down, and you're either going to go in one direction or the other. And I felt that horse stepped up, and how strong was it through the line? It almost gave you the view you're going to go further. But sometimes that's a little bit of a myth about what, doesn't automatically mean, you should be looking longer. But the reality was, it's how fast they went through the first 2 sections, and to still be there at the end and fighting. That's what makes good horses. Well,
Daniel's asked about Sabaj Doncaster, question mark. What's your thoughts for a big mile for Sabaj?
Why not?
Another big mile. Yeah,
another big mile. But you're up against, the top company, so it's always high level competition. It's not like you go into a race and you can afford to make an error. You can't afford to make an error. No one can afford to make an error. And it's just going to happen on the day, whether everything pans out to be perfect, and then can you produce a run that most likely this year you're going to have to be north of +4.
Oh, it's going to be a super strong race.
Yeah, unbelievable.
Just on Jordana's question, I might have missed this with you, Vince. As we speak, 3 weeks out from the Australian Cup off that type of brutal run, what would be your thoughts? Because normally what's gone wrong with her is they've backed her up within 2 weeks since post the bleed. 3 weeks is interesting, and maybe she gets the lead on completely her terms. What would be your thoughts now?
Well, it's a lot older horse.
Yeah.
No matter how good the stable is, it's got to take some sort of a toll, and they obviously know how to look after it in terms of, you know, trying to bring it right back so it can overcome such a big run. I just feel it's going to get back down to tempo. But is the horse back in terms of as good as it's been? Yes. So I can't sit here and say, is it going to be a problem at 2,000 metres? We've got to look at the lineup.
Exactly. All right, we'll leave it there. Big deep dives into the great races in Melbourne and Sydney. The carnival really focuses now on Sydney. You can get our preview podcast, the Coolmore Day, Friday. Big deep dive. You can listen back to how we do it. We always post everything, completely unedited on the Monday. And if you listen to this just via the same service, you can listen to a big deep dive preview of both the Newmarket Day and Randwick Guineas Day and our Saturday morning top up. So you can get that via my website, racetrackralphie.com.au. Vince Accardi's work is via dailysectionals.com.au, and if you're already getting his race speed profiles, there's an audio only top up. In the meantime, thanks so much for listening to Year Round Carnival.